What is the idea of zera of neshamas? The answer is, just like when you plant seeds, they grow. Neshamas come from Atzilus. And Hashem plants them in the lower worlds and they grow. Hashem takes the spark of the neshama, not the whole neshama, and He plants it in the lower worlds and then they grow. Some of them grow out of the ground, so to speak, proverbially speaking, in a way that they're zera adam. And most of them grow out of the ground in the kind of way that they're, proverbially speaking, in the madreg of zera behema. All neshamas come from Atzilus, but neshamas are born in the lower worlds because Hashem plants them. Zriyah. For Zarati, Hashem plants the seeds of the neshamas Yisrael, and they grow in the lower worlds. Some of them were seeded in the kind of way that when they're going to grow out, they're going to be the madreg of Adam. And others were seeded in the kind of way that they're going to grow out, they're going to be the madreg of zera behema. Very few are called zera Adam. What does that mean? That means that they come into this world, I mean, if you want to be honest about it, with the same awareness that they had in Atzilus. Atzilus is called Adam. Zera Adam means that they come into this world with the same awareness that they had in Atzilus. And that means they're not just smart. They're not just smart. Chassidus doesn't make such a big deal out of smarts. They're aware, they're earnest, they're connected. It's not just they know the whole Torah, they appreciate how serious it is. The earnestness of Torah. And that's the tight zera Adam. They come into this world as an Adam. Adam doesn't mean that they're smart. Adam means that they have das. When Hashem gives them a mitzvah, they take it earnestly and seriously. I have a little story to tell you. I have an acquaintance, I can't call him a friend. He lives here in Crown Heights. He's a emes Talmid Chacham. He's a great Talmid Chacham. His whole life is Torah. He's a mechutn of mine. He's a relative of my brother's. And he used to hang out here. When he was a bacher, he hung out here in Shiva. He's probably married 20 years, probably by now. But for a while he hung out here. He's a very big lamdan. And he told me an interesting story. He's a Los Angeles boy from LA. And it never rains in California, except for like 1 week out of the year, whatever it is. So when he went to learn Kfar Chabad. So when he learned Kfar Chabad, he took along a raincoat. He had a single-breasted raincoat. And his mother said, I have a single-breasted raincoat also. It looked exactly the same. He was the same size as his mother at that time. She said, take my coat also, I don't need it. So he went to Kfar Chabad with two identical raincoats. One was his and one was his mother's. He got to Kfar Chabad, and Mendel Futerfas was still alive and he was very old. And Mendel Futerfas had a shtick. It's a good shtick to have. Krishma Shalamita, he said in yeshiva. So sometimes after he was a mashpia, after Chassidus night he'd go home, he'd come back a second time and say Krishma Shalamita. Because you say Krishma Shalamita in yeshiva, you probably say it better. Like Achei knows, yeah. Rabbi Mendel was 85 years old, but he would say Krishma in yeshiva. He couldn't walk. Pasha couldn't walk. So we had to get the Bacharim to walk him to his house and from his house. Now the Mendel Futerfas is a legend. But if he happens to be your mashpia, he becomes always a legend. You know how it is. The only person that no matter how long you know him, the more you're still intimidated by him is a rebbe. Otherwise, you get used to everybody. It took forever. He lived 100 paces from the yeshiva. It took 25 minutes. He was very old. And the Israeli Bachim were not that interested in doing it. And this guy is a Chassidish boy. He's also a very nice person. So when Mendel asked him to walk him, he walked him. He had other guys also, but he didn't have enough walkers. And you would have to go to his house to pick him up or walk him to his home. It took a long time. It wasn't a long walk, but he was very old. So Mendel used to say, I have no money, I can't pay you. I'll pay you in Chassidish stories. That was the thing. So if you had a little seichel, and Mendel was something else. But it came to Mendel saw great Chassidim, but Mendel saw really great people in his youth. And if you had seichel and you listened to Mendel, Mendel is one of the few Elter Chassidim that I saw. I mean, Mendel Futerfas, I can't say I knew him, but Mendel Futerfas was the few people from that generation who had an influence on my life. I didn't see any of the others. I was old enough, but I was stupid. The Mendel Pashat lived longer. Most of them died in their 70s. He lived till 90. You know what I'm saying? He lived Pashat longer. So I saw Reb Mendel. I was sat by his Fabrengens. I feel like I took something from Reb Mendel. So this boy told me that he would pick up Reb Mendel, or he would walk him to his home, and it was worth it. You hear Chassidish stories from Reb Mendel. Anyway, one day it's raining in Kfar Chabad. So this boy, Yossi, puts on his coat. And Reb Mendel does not have a coat. So Yossi says to Reb Mendel, Yossi was 18, Reb Mendel was like 85. You can take my coat, there's no b'shum finished. And they start walking out of the building, and he remembers he has another one. He says, wait, I got a second coat. He runs back to the dorm. I tell a Russian Jew I have two coats, you know what I'm saying? I heard from people who knew that Mendel was a fundraiser. The Mendel was a mashpia in yeshiva. When he raised money for Russian Jews, he wouldn't take a penny. I heard from people who knew him and his wife in Kfar Chabad lived on old broken beds. Old broken beds. And people said to the Mendel, buy yourself new beds. It's not that much money. He says, when every Russian Jew has whatever they need, I'll buy himself a bed. He really was not, he didn't need anything. He didn't need it. It wasn't the pshat he had this guy. It didn't mean diddly squat to him. So two coats. So anyways, he runs, he gets the second coat, he puts it on the Mendel, and they're walking. And the Mendel laughs, and they were identical. I mean, really, why do you need two? So he tells him, I'll tell you the truth. I live in California, it never rains. My mother is the same size as I am, she has an identical coat. It's basically unigender, it's not specific to man and to woman. When the Mendel heard that it was his mother's coat, he tore it off him like it was a cancer. The Mendel was always making jokes. The Mendel was a comedian. He was incredible. He was hysterical, very funny. And he gave the impression that everything was laissez-faire. But he was really a big chassid. And Yossi said to me, he saw Yiddish Shamayim. The idea that he's wearing the coat of a woman, when it says in the Torah, Lei Tilbash, Gever, Simlas, Isha, a man should wear. He saw fear in his face. I'm wearing a woman's coat. So Yossi said, no, you don't understand. It's not man specific, it's not woman specific. He could have stood on his head. The Mendel was not going to wear that coat. He says, I saw b'muchesh what it means Yiddish Shamayim. Maybe he was unreasonable. He probably was unreasonable. But what it means, that not you do mitzvahs, you're afraid of doing something. I saw on his face that Mendel couldn't believe it. I put on a woman's coat. He ripped it off him like it was a cancer, a mamish. That's some, yeah, right. He was, there's nothing to talk about. He was, so then which one is which? You couldn't tell them apart. It was out of the question. But the word is, that's not because there's a big Talmud Chacham. It's because he has Yiddish Shamayim. The Yiddish Shamayim comes from Das. That's a symptom of Zero Adam. And there's not a lot of those. The Eibusha did not make a lot of people to naturally have a sense of God.